Welcome back to Lair Academy, it's Mickey again, and in this video we're going to be extending our administration panel here, just so we can add a export to CSV button on whether or not the user has verified their email address. Now, the reason I am using CSV is because there's no extra packages or anything like that that we need to include, and it's pretty easy to get it working. The first thing we want to do is in our index.blade for the administration, just create some bootstrapping where we can have a button to allow the user to download the CSV. So we'll just make this a button class of primary, and you can also see that I'm using a comment for the filter, as that will be a later episode where we actually filter the rows that we're returning here. So let's just change the primary color to default. Instead of saying export, we'll just say filter. Now let's give that a save, and let's switch over to Chrome and see how it looks. Now you can see our buttons are on the far right here. There's a little spacing issue, but because this is a demo, I'm not really going to worry about that. Let's change the link of our export to a route, and we'll name this afterwards. So instead of going to the hashtag, we'll say administration.export. And now we'll head on over to our routes. Let's just duplicate this line, and we're going to say export/CSV, and this way we'll just set it up to do multiple things. Again, we'll name our function export CSV, and the name we're just going to have export, where you'll probably want to have something like export.csv or something like that. Now let's save that and switch over to the administration controller, and let's create the new function. So I'll just shorthand my method here, and I'll say export CSV. And the first thing we're going to do is make a variable for users, and let's grab all the users ordered by email, and we'll make sure that we get all of the rows. Now there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can do this, and for now let's just write a private function inside our administration controller. Most likely you'll want to take this function and put it in a library or something, but for now we'll call this function array to CSV download, and we're going to accept the array that we're going to add to the screen, as well as the file name. And right now I'll just have it as export.csv. And for now, let's just leave this blank. We'll put this in here. So this function here, the export CSV, would call this class an array to CSV download. We'll pass the users, and let's also put in a file name here. And we'll just stub at the end where we're going to have to return a response to actually download the file. Now let's take a look at our users array. So we'll just do a die and dump on this users here. Switch over to Chrome. Let's click our export button, and you can see that we currently have 2 users in here. Now with those 2 users, we're going to have to pass them into array to CSV download, which we already do, and we're going to use some CSV functions to help us here. What we're going to create first is a handle, and instead of writing to a file, we're going to use fopen, and we're going to say php output and make sure that it is in write mode. Now, if this is new to you, this is pretty much the same thing as doing a print or an echo. It just basically puts it to this screen. However, we can open up a handle to it, or a pointer. Once we have our handle open, the next thing we're going to do is loop through our users. So we'll say for each array as an item. And you know what, that just doesn't sound right. So right now, instead of array to CSV download and passing in an array, let's change this to say users. With our function change and our variables change, we're going to say for each of the users as a user, we're going to call the fput.csv function, which will accept the handle, followed by an array of items that we want to store in a row. And for us, we are going to use the user's email address and whether or not the user is verified. And the third and final parameter is the delimiter, and in this case we'll just use the comma. This is probably something that you should pass into this function, but for now that's actually fine. Alright, so let's update our function call, and let's try this in Chrome. Let's export, and you can see that we have some output on the screen. You may notice that one of your items or one of the rows is 0 and it's not displayed, and we'll come back and fix that in a little bit. I want to work on the responses first so we can get the file actually downloading. So if we head on back up to export CSV, where we have return responses, what we're going to do is we're going to say return response, and we're going to send the header of a content type, and the content type that we're going to use for CSV is going to be application CSV. Next, let's also return a header, and this is going to be an attachment. So we'll say content disposition is an attachment, and then we'll pass in the file name. Now looking at this file name here, let's actually take this code and put it in a variable called file name. So we'll just add this to our top and paste our code in that we had. And while we're doing this, let's actually add a few more comments here just to save us time later on. So we'll just say this is the output CSV to screen, and this is where we're returning our responses. So we'll take this file name and we'll just put it in the content disposition. And the final thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make this response. And what I mean by that is if we try and do this right now, you'll see that we have an error, and that's because it doesn't actually know what response to return. So if we click on export, we'll get this bad method call exception. So to fix this, let's come back here. So we will append on a make command, and we're not going to send it any view or anything, and we're going to send the HTTP code of 200. So if we try this in Chrome, you can see that our file actually downloads. And let's open this up in Notepad first. You can see that everything's on one line. However, when we open it up in Excel or a CSV program, this will actually be on a new line. And you can see that we're missing that 0 there. So let's tackle that now. Back in Sublime, in the users to CSV download, we're going to cast user email verified to an integer. Now if we try and download this file again and open it up in a text editor, we'll see that the CSV now contains a 0. So we'll just drag this in, and there's our false. Now if we open this up and say Google Docs, you can see that our data is now separated on a new line, and that the true and false, the 0 and 1, is actually coming through properly. And that actually brings us to an end in this video. As you can see that everything is now functioning 100% correctly, and we can run a quick report on who has been verified and who hasn't. I want to thank you again for watching this video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.